Okay, I'm going to teach you how to do a Z-Score neurofeedback session with neurostimulation, how to set up thresholds, and use the Zukor media player as the feedback. So start NeuroField64, and this is based on beta version 2.2.7.2. Okay, as usual, when the program fires up, it's going to show you what's connected to the system. I'm going to select CAN bus number 1, and I'm going to enter a new patient. So I'm going to delete this previous one that I had in here. I'm going to enter a new one, and I'm going to put a new year just to make it a little different. And then click on Add New Patient. Patient added successfully. You'll see the patient added to the grid. Left click next to the patient's name and you will highlight their name and they will be selected. You'll notice at the top you see patient selection in these tabs: treatment, stimulation setup, neurofeedback selection, start treatment, and treatment summary. These are laid out in logical order for the purpose of helping you to work through each piece of the setup. You'll see a little red text blinking on each one of the pages, and it will tell you what you need to be doing. So here's saying pick a patient and click continue, so I'm doing that. Now I need to set up my Stim units. You can set up two primary, two EMFs units and two direct current stimulation units. So I have two X3000s connected to the system right now, so I want to enable both of them. You don't have to enable all the units. You can run one. All the protocols are set up for 4 units, but you can run 1, 2, 3, or 4. It's up to you. And I have 2 direct current stim units enabled, so I'm going to enable those as well. Use the drop downs to pick your sites. Remember, you don't have to do this either, but if you do, all this information is saved in the history, so the next time you see the patient, you can pull all this up and it'll all be displayed for you. It'll also auto-load the next time that you set this up. So I just set up where I'm going to put all my coils, and then for my current devices, I'm going to say FP1 to O1, FP2 to O2. This is actually a setup we do use in my clinic. You can override the amplitudes for any of the protocols. You can override the waveform for the TDCSs here if you want to. You can also override the duration of the stimulation for all the protocols at the bottom here by clicking Global Duration Override and changing the number. After you enable your Stim units, select your treatment protocol. I'm going to select 1 to 4 HD, and I'm going to load it. You click Load, and it loads in. I click Save Protocol and Continue. Then right now what I'm going to do is set it to 3 loops, just so I don't run out of frequencies to give as I do the neurofeedback procedure. Next, I'm going to click on Save Stim Setup and Continue, and it'll take me to my next page. Unlike the Stim only video I just did, you want to select EEG here because you're going to do EEG neurofeedback. When I do that, these controls become active. So now the Q20 is selected for you automatically. Then I'm going to check my feedback type. I'm going to select Zukor feedback. You could also do tones if you want. That's kind of another way of adding sounds, which is more old school neurofeedback. Training metric. You can do amplitude training or you can do Z-Score. Amplitude training is like old school amplitude training. Z-Score uses the Applied Neuroscience DLL, which you do activate through NeuroField. You have to call us and we can help you to get that going. So if you want to use Z-Scores, click on Z-Score. The Z-Score gain of 2, leave it at 2. It's the default value. There's more to that, but that's for another video. The procedure, you can use real-time hit or RTZ, which is real-time Z-Score, or you can use progressive scan. Real-time Z-Score, what it does is a stimulation is given. In this case, it'll be 1 Hertz because we're using the 1 to 4 Hertz protocol. And then EEG will be taken for X amount of time. In this case, it's going to be 16 seconds of neurofeedback training. At the end of the 16 seconds, the entire 16 seconds will be averaged. If the threshold criteria that you set up is met, then NeuroField will give the same frequency over again. But if it's not met, then NeuroField will modulate to the next Stim cycle and give you the next frequency. So it would be 1.1, for instance. It'll keep on doing it until we can get the brain to do what we want it to do, which is to satisfy the thresholds. Progressive scan is a little different from RTZ in that what it does is it starts you off with a stimulation. Then it gives you, in this case, it'll give you 16 seconds of treatment. And at the end of the 16 seconds, it wants to see whether or not the thresholds were met, the criteria for the thresholds were met. If they are, then it will automatically double the training time and will not give you a stimulation, and it'll just train you again. So in this case, we start at 16. If the thresholds are met, it'll go to 32. And if they're met again, it'll go to 64. But if the threshold criteria is not met, then what happens is that NeuroField stops. It will divide by 2, whatever that training time is, and then give you another stimulation. So if you're at 32 seconds and you don't accomplish the thresholds, it'll give you a stim and bring you back down to 16. So it's another kind of cool way to do neurofeedback. It's designed to use the stimulation as needed to help the person move along, but really puts the onus of responsibility on the person specifically and not give them as much stimulation. We usually start with RTZ and then eventually get to progressive scan, but that's down the road. Patient age will be populated automatically because we're going to have the date of birth from the patient's setup. Then you have the eye status, open and closed. In this case, we're going to be open. QEEG cap is being used. You can do individual electrodes if you want. And then training time. You can set up your training time any way you want to. I'm going to say 32-second training times with a max progressive time of 128. Now, we're not doing progressive scan, so this max progressive time doesn't matter. Whatever it's set at, it's not going to matter until you enable progressive scan. So once you got all this set up the way you want it, click Save Patient Settings and Continue. It'll take you to the threshold screen. Now, it says right now that no thresholds have been saved for this patient because it's a brand new patient. And we'll say, okay, well, now let's create it. And so it takes you to the setup. And the first tab here, it's the amplitude threshold setup. So we're going to be giving delta. So let's see if we threshold on delta 1 to -1. You can click on any of these drop downs and set your Z-score values that you want to set up. And you're going to base this on your QEEG data. Now you can change these thresholds any way you want to and really customize your setup for a person. These setups are saved in the patient's file, so the next time you go to run NeuroField, it'll auto-load them for you. So once you get your setup set up the way you want to, and we're just going to try to produce delta here, then you click on Next. And now it's taking me to the threshold coherence pair selection. Now, to set up pairs, what we need to do is we need to select a drop-down menu here, and we need to select a empty table. So I'll select an empty table, and as soon as I do that, all these sites become clickable. Now, before you start clicking sites, you want to name this. So let's say I name it the name of the patient. So I know the next time I come in, NeuroField will know where to get that information. Now, I had set up my direct current device at FP101, so I'll set one pair that way, another to FP202. I'm just selecting arbitrary pairs here. And you can set up anything, but you really want to make these pair selections based on the queue as well. You can set up to 10 pairs, and you can train on 10 pairs of coherence and or 10 pairs of phase. So once you set up your pairs and you're all ready to go, click on Next. And now it's going to take us to the actual threshold setup. So now you need to assign thresholds, or not thresholds, metrics to these pairs. And so I'm going to pick these pairs here. I'm going to make the first two delta for these guys, and then over here I'm going to make these guys delta as well. You don't have to enable everything. You can set them up accordingly. So once you got it all set up and you like it, you click on next. It'll take you to the next screen. And then the last thing to do is set up your logic mode. Now, I use the percentage logic mode 99.9% of the time. The and or modes are very rare to use. We used to use those in the old program. Some things die hard. It made it into the new program. And so if you use an AND logic, that means you're selecting all the thresholds. OR logic means you're selecting any of the thresholds. And then percentages means that a certain percentage of these thresholds have to be met in order to get a reward. So I would always suggest using the percentage threshold. Don't worry about the number of 50. You can adjust the thresholds on the fly. So once you're all set up, click on Save Patient Threshold Setting and Continue. And it takes you to your start screen now, and we're all ready to go. So you have your TACS electrodes on the person, you have your QEEG cap on the person, you have your coils on the person. You have them all set up, and you click on Start Treatment. Now NeuroField is going to set up all these conditions and then open Zukor for you. Again, you have the Zukor media player installed in order to use it here with NeuroField. We are a reseller for Zukor products, just like Applied Neuroscience products. So if you want to get the player, please contact me and we can get it to you. So I'm going to start the media player. You see there was a little pop-up window that says press OK when Zukor is ready. Don't press it until Zukor is off and running and you have the video going, because as soon as you press OK, then the NeuroField will start up and training will begin. If everything's set up right, you'll see at the bottom here it says connected to NeuroField. And then what you do is just click on the, you want to create a profile for a person, load it, start a new session. Now Modality Editor is going to open. We're still being certified by Zukor, and I'm sure soon we're going to have that done. But you do need to set up a modality for NeuroField. And so what you do is just click on the Modality Editor. You only need to do this one time. And then click on New. And then it's going to open up. You're going to name your preset NeuroField. Then after that, all you have to do is enable event number 1 here. This is the box on the upper left-hand corner. Click the little box to enable event 1 and make everything here exactly the same. So click on effect and make it global. Source is 1. Feedback type is proportional, and true when above threshold. Now once you set all that up, then you go and click on Save. And then it will create your NeuroField modality. You only need to do it once, and then you're good to go. Now when it pops open, you're going to see the modality NeuroField. Say OK. It'll say it's applied, and you'll see it here, connected to NeuroField, modality NeuroField. Now for effects in Zukor, I like to use the contrast and the zoom effect. For the contrast, we set it at 5%, at 0 and 11%, 250 millisecond update times. And then for the zoom, we set the settings at 100 millisecond updates at 3%, 0 and 83%. That's our settings that we tend to like. You can play around with this and see what you're comfortable with. There's a lot of really great effects here, but these are the two that I use. Next thing you want to do is choose your media, and you can use in Zukor. You can do a lot of different stuff. They have video files, DVD, all sorts of stuff. I just have some video files loaded. You can put a DVD and start a movie. It's up to you. Just so you know, we have 4 rooms that are all connected to a server where we have all these DVDs ripped to the server. And we run Zukor on all 4 of these machines, and it doesn't hiccup at all. It's great. So I'm just going to select a video here, say OK, and then I'm going to click on Ready to start Zukor, and then click on the play button. Zukor is going to fire up here and start. I'm going to kill the volume for now. And once it starts going, you're going to notice that it's going to start scoring. It's because the screen, NeuroField's sending a 100% reward right now to Zukor. So I'm going to put this in a windowed mode and just bring it down so that you can see this. We have 2 monitors in every treatment room in my clinic, and Zukor is on 1 monitor for the patient. So I'm going to put this up here so you can see it. Now Zukor is ready to go, so I'm going to click on this little button here. It says press continue when Zukor is ready, so we're ready to go. NeuroField's going to fire up now, and it's going to start with EEG, and it's going to take the baseline of 32 seconds, I believe that's what we said. Yep. And if the criteria for the threshold is not met, then you're going to see Zukor get small there, and that's exactly what happens. At the end of every 32 seconds with RTZ, you do get a stim. While the stim is being given, Zukor will be fed a 100% reward, because we want to pair 100% reward with the stimulation. And so at the end of the first treatment round, you'll see Zukor is getting big there, and then now here's the first stim as it's being given, and you can see our Z-scores now. And you can see here our Z-scores are not being met. We have a really low delta Z-score. So I'm going to turn on my signal generator, and I'm going to generate some delta and see if we can get it to a point where we're getting some hits on the Z-score. I'm going to start my signal generator, and now we see we're generating some delta here. I'm going to reduce my value until I can get it down into a normal range. One more here. There we go. Okay, so now what you're seeing here is we're getting hits. And in the Z-score table, on the bottom right hand side, you can see the percentage of hits that we're getting, and you can see how many times Zukor actually gets hits. Now on the start treatment page, you'll see that the threshold percent adjust is set at 50%. Now right now Zukor is getting hits at 72%, and which is above the 50% that we set initially. So I'm going to increase the threshold on the fly here and bring it to 73%. And as you can see here, Zukor starts to get small because threshold's not being met. But if I change it, bring it down to 72, then you're going to see how these things are going to modulate. Now, in a real brain, there's variability, and so you're going to see changes that are going to go back and forth. And you want to change this at threshold and adjust it so that you're getting Zukor to respond, and the screen's not necessarily open all the way, but not necessarily closed all the way. You want to get it to modulate, kind of like this. So it's going in and then back out and then back in, and you can see how Zukor is pretty responsive. The feedback in NeuroField is pretty fast. So you can see how this is working, and one of the cool features here is you can watch your real-time Z-score, and then you can click on the tab here that says treatment running ZAP values. Now what this is showing you is the Z-score for each specific site in each specific band for each specific stim cycle as it's going along. So it's kind of cool. You can choose any site, and then you can see in the first run through there we were at -5, and when I turned on the signal generator and started playing with it, I was able to modulate those Z-scores between that 1 and -1 range. And you can do the same thing for coherence here, and look at the running coherences for each one of the pairs, and for phase for each one of the pairs, all in real time, and see again how the program is responding, how the person's doing in treatment. You can click on the RMS values, and you can see what the actual microvolt values are for each person. Now, one of the cool things here is on our table, you can also see the ZAP status, which is absolute power, pH is phase, CO is coherence, and then at the bottom, that's the all the Z-scores put together, and this is what we use to calculate our thresholds. And you can see how it works between each one of the stims. The program is it's pretty fast. It's pretty reliable. A lot of testing has gone into making this as bomb-proof as possible. Of course, if you do find any issues, let us know. You can adjust, like I said, the threshold adjust the percentage on the fly. You can also adjust your thresholds on the fly. Now you should know one thing: if you adjust a threshold on the fly, the data for the threshold change is not saved, so the threshold is going to remain the same. But it's right here. Just click on this button; it'll open up a threshold. Now, if you notice here, we have F3. We're setting to delta. These highlighted cells are the ones we're training on. So I want to change it to theta. So I'm going to drop down to F3. I'm going to enable theta, and then I'm going to make the upper Z-score 1 and the lower -1, and I'm going to update the thresholds. And when I do that, you can see that theta changes here, or delta, F3 changes from delta to theta right on the fly. You can change any one of these the way you want to. Same with the coherence setups and the phase setups as well. If you're running absolute power, you can also change your power levels. So that's kind of a cool on-the-fly threshold adjust. Alright, that's pretty much it. If you want to stop the program and save all the data, click on Stop Treatment. It'll run through the last stim cycle, and then it'll save the data and it will stop. If you need to stop immediately, then you click on Stop Treatment ASAP. The data will not be saved. It will get dumped essentially in the program. It's kind of like a kill switch essentially. Now be mindful that if you click on Stop Treatment and you're doing 30-second or 60-second scans with the EEG, it'll finish whatever scan it's on, and then it'll take a post-treatment scan to save the data. So if you click on Stop Treatment, be patient. It could take up to 30 seconds to a minute for the program to get its post-treatment data, save it, and then stop. So if I click on Stop Treatment right now, it should bail out and then show you that it's done. And let's see if it actually does it. And then, boom. We should all get out. There it goes. Okay. So Zukor is still running right now, but the treatment's actually stopped, and you can see it says treatment complete. Click to continue. So I'm going to X out of Zukor here and kill that. Click this, and it takes you right back to that start treatment window. Now here's one of the cool aspects of NeuroField right now. So a week goes by, or a day goes by, or hours go by, and your patient comes back in, and you want to give them the same treatment. Well, you start up the program, use CAN bus number 1, select your patient, select patient, and continue. And you click on Get Patient Stim Setup. It loads all those things that you loaded initially. Save and continue. Then you click on Get Patient Settings. It loads up all your EEG settings. You say Save and Continue. Then it's going to load up all the thresholds that you set initially, so you don't need to do anything. If you want to make changes, you can. Click Next. It'll load up the pairs that you set up. Click Next. It'll set up the thresholds for your coherence and phase metrics. You want to keep them the same, keep them that way, and click Next. Otherwise, change them. Then it loads your logic for you, and then you're ready to go. That's how fast you can get somebody set up in the program once you do your initial settings. Okay, so this concludes using the